So today I'm joined by Ishank Gupta, the co-founder of KGeN. KGeN is known as the world's largest verified distribution protocol for artificial intelligence, decentralized finance, and gaming, and consumer apps. So it's very much a mouthful, but what does that actually mean in practice? So, how is KGeN changing the world? Let's start there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Marissa. I'm very happy to be here, firstly. I agree with you. I think the set of industries is a mouthful. We need to find a solve for that. But KGeN is doing something meaningful and something quite simple, really. Our objective is to bring real users to real products. So think of us as a partner, a distribution partner, where on the one hand, we have users who have a reputation on our platform and we verify that reputation, hence the term verify. And on the other hand, we have projects. These could be Web3 projects, these could be AI projects, these could be consumer products, right? Who are looking for these users, and we try to bring them together in a way that's a win-win situation. Real users, real projects coming together with the power of KGeN.
So that was beautifully distilled, but I think in an industry like Web3 where we've got a lot of jargon, verify is a fairly new entrant into that dictionary. It sort of layers on and is an evolution of a concept known as infofy. How do those two domains connect? What is the thing that verify adds to that we didn't really have before in this industry?
So I wouldn't call it an evolution, to be honest. I think they're very distinct objectives. If I give you my take on InfoFi, I would say InfoFi is amazing for top of the funnel awareness. Since you're a marketeer, I think this will resonate with you. InfoFi is amazing for top of the funnel awareness. Whereas when we think of Verify, we are talking about engagement, which is somewhere in the middle or the bottom of the funnel, right? So therefore, they're not linked with each other directly, but there could be an indirect linkage. Now, what does Verify mean, right? We have a network of 38 million users who have registered on KGeN, right? And we actually don't believe that 100% of these users are real users, because a lot of these could be agents, a lot of these could be bots in those applications that we are integrated with, and so on, right? Long story short, our objective is to create a very simple framework which allows any project to truly validate whether a user or a gamer or a coder or a developer that's coming into their project has a real reputation before entering their project. And that is the role of KGeN, to provide that real reputation, to provide that stamp of approval almost that this is a verified user. We use what we call the proof of gamified engagement. Again, a mouthful. Let's call it POGI. We use a POGI engine, which is built on top of Aptos. But the POGI engine has 5 components, and those components are very simple. The first one is proof of human, meaning is this account verified that this is being run by a human user or not, right? And we use biometric verification, and in advanced cases, we even use KYC, right? So proof of human is a key part. The second key component I would say is proof of skill, which is particularly useful when we are dealing with AI training projects and AI agent or model evaluation projects, where is this person a coder? Is this person a doctor? What is the proof they went to this college? What is the proof they have a particular degree, and so on, right? So there's a proof of skill component, which is very, very powerful. There is proof of commerce, which is to say whether this user is only here to extract value, which is very, very pertinent in Web3, or is this user also spending their dollars that they're getting from one project into another project, and so on, right? Are they a transacting user or not? And lastly, there is proof of network and proof of engagement. I don't want to spend too much time on each component, but the broad idea is that when these 5 proofs sort of combine, it leads to a singular score. And that score is what we use to connect our users with different industries that you mentioned at the beginning of this chat.
How did you come to define the 5 pillars of POGI?
So we drew inspiration from 2 sources, Marissa. The first source is obviously the Facebook audience network, which is very powerful in the West. We saw what are the different passion points, what are the different parameters, demographic parameters, passion point parameters, interest parameters that Facebook uses. It's obviously a lot different right now versus what it was 5-7 years ago. And through my time in China, I also had the luxury of very closely understanding the targeting system that is used by Tencent and also Alibaba, particularly on a store called Tmall, right? Where I spent a lot of time actually launching a brand store, a product store on Tmall. So using these 3-4 sources of inspiration, and it's beautiful, right? if you think about it, our seed round was led by one of the people who led the seed round for Facebook. And our strategic round is being led by somebody who continues to be the largest investor in Tencent. So that also tells you the sort of people who are backing KGeN, they understand what we're building very deeply, right? So the thought process was to draw inspiration from models that already work and leverage the power of chain to bring in transparency for the end users of these protocols. And the end users of these protocols, I'm not referring to the individuals like you and me who could have a reputation, but I mean customers who will be actually paying for this reputation system to bring users into their projects, right? So, long story short, these 5 proofs happen to be a culmination of various different components that we thought were meaningful to our partners, and they were not built overnight. It was not that one day Manish and Ishank sat down with our team that, hey, these are the 5 proofs, right? It was an evolution of a journey where we started with working with our first set of customers with nothing but a Discord server and a WhatsApp group, and then over time built out the product, evolved the product into its current shape and form, where these are the 5 elements that are most in demand by our customers today.
So then by that, KGeN sort of faces both sides of the equation, both like the B2B and also the retail side of things. And then I guess you could add a third dimension, which is sort of the Web3 retail side of things and the users who are incentivized to engage. How do you design a system that benefits all parties?
So let's break it into 2 sides first. The sides are projects, which could be L1, L2 chains, it could be DeFi, AI, gaming projects, right? These are projects who are looking for users. And then there is the community aspect, right? The user aspect. Now, on the community part, let's break it into 2. One is people who are speculative, who are looking to make money by virtue of the success of the project itself. It could be a combination of trying to farm airdrops, but also potentially investing in the project to make a multiple or a return, right, from the project. And the second part is the users of the product itself. People who are actually coming in, engaging with those projects that are running campaigns with KGeN, right? Or people who are coming in and using the store. So firstly, I like to believe that it's a Venn diagram, right? Now I'm talking about the 2 cohorts within the community side. It's a Venn diagram. Yes, there could be people who are both users as well as speculators, but in my limited experience, these 2 cohorts tend to be very separate from each other. A lot of people who are taking a punt on a particular token may or may not be using that product. If they use it and are also buying the token, it's a great combination to have. And then there are a lot of people who are users of a particular product for various reasons, right? We believe that the primal human desires of fame, power, and money all have a role to play in what we are building at KGeN. So these users may choose to buy the token, may not choose to buy the token. So they're very separate from each other. So we are very clear in our heads that when we are building the product, the users and the token buyers / farmers may or may not be the same cohort. And therefore, when we think of airdrops, we don't think of airdrops from the lens of incentivizing engagement. We think of airdrops as a reward for people who are already engaging or evangelizing the product and who could potentially be with us for the long run.
Do you have any insights as to whether that balance between, or the ratio between those that are sort of speculative holders of tokens versus those who are actively transacting in tokens is shifting more towards that utility side?
I wish I could give you a very clear, simple answer to that question. But I think it's a constantly evolving space. I know you probably are tired of hearing this. I see a lot of people talk about how early we are in the space. I don't think we are super early because there is a lot of mainstream adoption happening around crypto, right? I mean, stablecoins is a great example. I see a lot of institutional guys taking an active interest in the space from the lens of not just making a quick buck, but from the lens of investing long-term capital in the space, right? And a lot of that money is flowing in to projects which are building something meaningful. For example, even the investors in KGeN, they're all people who think 5-10 years. They're not people who are looking at the next 1 year or 2 years, to multiply their capital. To answer your question simply, yes, there is obviously a trend towards a lot more projects focusing on utility, but ultimately the space needs to evolve towards building real sustainable businesses. And I think that's already happening because when we started KGeN, a lot of people did not talk about revenue actively. Whereas if you look at what's happening today, a lot of people are actively looking at how projects are making money, what money are the projects making, how sustainable is the money that they're making. And that for me is the biggest sign of the fact that people are moving more and more towards utility.
I think I think the reputation of the industry, or like builders within the industry, has often been about quick winners. It's about how can someone develop a product that can extract value from an existing ecosystem. But I think that harshly judges how difficult it is to build a product for an industry that's very much incentivized by quick rewards, that can both service those quick rewards enough to sustain themselves for a longer term play. So how does KGeN strike that balance where it satisfies, I guess, the appetite for an immediate return in favor of building a runway that's going to last it for the next decade?
It would be presumptuous on my part to say that KGeN is actually striking that balance, because I do believe that there would be many people who've been waiting for a long time for KGeN to, for example, be that sort of a project that can generate a multiple or a return for them. But to be honest, we don't worry so much about it. We like to build for the long term. We are here to build for the next 10 years. Most of the elder members council that we have actually comes from a similar background. We don't worry so much about it, Marissa. That's the real answer to your question, because we believe that if we build something that's sustainable and meaningful, that will generate a lot of returns for everyone who is part of the project, be it our early investors, be it our team members, be it our community, in whatever order, right? But just to give you a sense, our community unlocks start on day zero, but our investor and team unlocks only start after month 12, whenever we launch our token. And we don't have a date right now to launch our token, right? Look at it differently. When we do airdrops, we incentivize people who are playing a pivotal role within our network of community, which is our clan chiefs and operators who've been around, who've been evangelizing the project, not from the lens of token buyers, but from the lens of actual users on the project, right? Bringing in real users to come and participate in different campaigns and so on. So long story short, we like to continue building the project in a way that we think we're adding real value to the ecosystem, and we don't think so much about striking that balance that you were alluding to.
I think KGeN also has the privilege of not only being well backed by VC funding, but also the fact that it is already revenue generating. So there is, I guess, perhaps less of a dependency on the conventional Web3 dynamics that many projects are used to or find themselves falling into by default. So you mentioned that KGeN intends to launch a token. What value does that sort of add into the equation, and how does that balance against, I guess, the revenue that it's already generating?
So think of it like this, right? The root cause of having a token structure is to create a network which is owned by the users of the network, right? If in a traditional equity structure, it is nearly impossible to have people sitting in Korea, India, Nigeria, Brazil own the same network, right? I mean, yes, one could argue that there are complicated corporate structures that could make it possible, but that doesn't happen, right? In very simple terms, the purpose of the token is to accrue value from the network to the owners of the token. As simple as that. Therefore, if you think of revenue, right? Revenue leads to free cash flows. Free cash flows lead to value accrual for the token holders. The token itself could signify various benefits in the network, right? As a user, it could give you access to different offers on the store. It's a way of giving the power back to you by being not just a participant, but an owner in the network. As a customer, if I'm a project, I could own KGeN tokens to get perpetual user acquisition for free, right? There are various things that are part of our tokenomic structure, and these things will also evolve as the token comes to life, where customers, users, stakeholders, investors will all benefit directly from having a single instrument of value accrual that cuts across geographies, that cuts across jurisdictions.
So in a way, it's more about allowing people to participate and to have a stake in the value of KGeN rather than it is to qualify them as a user. In that way, KGeN is uniquely designed in that it finds the compromise between, I guess, like the traditional structure of a startup with the Web3 model and trying to drive that incentivized behavior without it sort of muddying the data pool for what's ultimately driving your revenue. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, I think that's more than fair. And that's very powerful for us, Marissa, purely because when we think of our reputation system, right? Today, for example, for the 38 million users that we have in the network, and the monthly active is about 5 to 6 mil. Today, we have close to about 900 million data points about these people. And this is without launching any token, right? We don't need to have a token in place for this business to work from a user acquisition standpoint or from a case store standpoint or from an AI training standpoint, right? But what we believe the token will do is when it comes to life, it will put this flywheel on steroids, which means that if Marissa and Ishank know that their effort is also going to create wealth for them, I believe, our team believes, our hypothesis is that that will incentivize our current evangelists, current owners, current participants to work even harder to bring more value to each other in the network. So the network effect, the flywheel, will be even more powerful when every participant in the network is also an owner of the network.
So I think what's particularly fascinating is those numbers are so impressive. Since the inception of KGeN, how did you develop a, I guess, user acquisition model that could capture that much in a relatively short amount of time where, you know, I think a lot of crypto native projects struggle to get off the ground? What was the user acquisition strategy to drive that level of volume in such a short window?
That's a great question. So we had two primary growth hacks. One was more behavioral, one was more structural. So let's talk about the first one, right? So we believe that a lot of people enjoy the sense of community, and communities need to be centered around a passion point. There needs to be something that brings the community together, right? So on the first side, we onboarded community leaders who had existing communities on Discord, Telegram, WhatsApp, in their colleges, in their offices, in their residential societies. People who were seen as community leaders in their own micro community. We invited them to become what we call clan chiefs at KGeN. The first 50 clan chiefs were handpicked by us. Literally, Manish and I called people, spoke to them about what we were building, and we brought in the first 50. And those 50 are now a set of 30,000 active clan chiefs across 60 countries, right? And this grew because of word of mouth. Because each time a clan member got a reward, the clan chief got a reward, right? So clan chiefs started making meaningful money because of KGeN, and that's what grew the growth of the clan model. So that gives us the depth of our relationships with our network, right? On the breadth side, what we did was we saw certain behavioral things were working really well on our platform, particularly retention leaderboards and engagement leaderboards. So we created very simple APIs and went to Web2 applications that were doing well, that were profitable, but had stagnated in terms of their growth. And we started experimenting firstly with Web2 games, and now we are experimenting with Web2 media companies where we integrated the KGeN retention protocol inside those applications and allowed users to earn what is called K-Cash by participating in those retention or engagement leaderboards. What that did was that allowed a higher retention for those Web2 applications, which led to them making more money. And a part of that money is now being funneled into what is the K-Cash rewards, which users can redeem on the store. So that gave us a breadth of network, because when we went to these Web2 applications, some of them had 300, 400,000 monthly active users. Some of them have 5 million monthly active users. And right now we are in the process. This is a little bit of, my marketing team might kill me for saying this, but we are in the process of integrating with certain applications that have 50 million monthly active users, right? So you can only imagine what scale KGeN can get in terms of the user base by doing more and more of these integrations. So those were the two growth hacks.
And then so on the enterprise side, where you look for those strategic partnerships, I guess what is the pitch to them as to saying this is why you need to leave your old sort of data insights models behind, and this is where you're going to find truly enriched data?
It would be naive on my part to say that we are replacing their old models. What I do believe we are doing is we are augmenting their old models. So what that would mean in simple terms, as a marketeer today, you're spending $100 on Facebook and Google. What our partners are starting to do now is they're spending $90 on Facebook and Google, and they're experimenting with $10 on KGeN, right? So our objective is to keep increasing the number of people who are doing that experiment. And for the people who like the experiment, we want them to move from 90-10 to 20-80 and so on, right? I mean, the objective is to be a core part of the distribution solution. It would be naive to say that we are here to replace everyone, because we are dealing with very sophisticated solutions even in Web2, right? These solutions work. They don't do certain things for the users, and that's what we want to do for the users while making the customers believe that these solutions also, the KGeN solution can also work. So simply put, we are augmenting the existing Web2 solutions for the customers, and for the users, we are doing things which the Web2 partners never did.
Given the volume of users, the number of enterprise partners that are coming in, the the revenue that's being generated, the investor interest that's already been capitalized on. What other insights have you brought into the fold that have helped design the roadmap for KGeN? How do you approach that diversity of data, and how do you cater the product to service different market needs?
Great question. So let's look at the architecture, so to say, right, of what we built out. The underlying reputation system is constant across our different business units. We call it the POGI system, the proof of gamified engagement system, which is where all the data sits, right? And how we are decentralizing this data is a separate chat, right? We can talk about that separately. So the POGI system is the core of what we built. On top of it, we have three products. The first product is what we call KGeN Engage, which is where we run user acquisition campaigns for DeFi companies, gaming companies. We can bring developers for L1, L2 chains. And we also have what we call Kai, which is Kratos AI solution, which is a UA solution, but for AI training, right? So all of this sits under KGeN Engage. The second big product that we have is what we call the retention protocol, which is what I was describing as one of the growth hacks, where we integrate the retention protocol inside Web2 applications and further drive engagement retention, therefore more revenue for those applications, right? And the third part is what we call the K-Store. So all of these users that come through KGeN Engage and the retention protocol, they can use the store, but also the store has its own distribution network of client chiefs, which are today powering almost 95% of the store revenue. So the good news is the backend system, the infrastructure that we're building out is one singular infra across all these product types. And these products are essentially a way to monetize this user data that we have. And the cool part is that because the user data is owned by the users in the KGeN network, that's why a bulk of the money that comes to KGeN is given out as rewards to the users. And when I say rewards, I don't mean in the form of KGeN token, I mean in the form of actual USDT or Kcash rewards. Kcash is nothing but our own platform currency, which is pegged to the dollar. So essentially, we are taking a reputation engine, a verified reputation engine, and then plugging in different business units on top of it, depending on market opportunity, depending on what our customers need us for, depending on where we see a chance to make money for the network. As a user, you might see your own personal reputation getting evolved. You have your own score in the system, which could keep evolving, which could keep changing. And you have different interfaces to interact with the KGeN Engage platform, or there are different applications on the Web2 side where you can go and participate in the retention protocol. And there is a separate interface for the store. But for you as a user, your entire profile is a singular profile sitting as a POGI profile inside KGeN, where every action that you do in any application in the KGeN network is recorded into a singular score and put on chain. And anytime a new customer comes in for KGeN, customer for KGeN, they would target the right users based on the reputation that they see on this chain. Right?
I guess past the crypto component, why is the on-chain element so critical? Is it just for verifiability?
It's for immutability primarily. The idea is that if you and I both believe that Marissa's profile cannot be changed based on Ishank's whims and fancies, that increases the trust in Marissa's profile if you're a marketeer spending money on acquiring Marissa for your project, right? A lot of Web2 protocols, you put in money, you select a campaign objective, and then you get some users, right? And then you look at, is my engagement good? Is my retention good? Versus, let's say, Marissa, you're launching a DeFi project tomorrow, right? And I actually bring you users who have it in their profile, a healthy proof of commerce score. Your willingness to spend will be higher, and your ability to judge whether they were the right users for your product or whether you need to change the cohort that you need to target fundamentally. A lot of decision making can be very different for you as a marketeer or for you as a growth head of your project when you have something which is verifiable and cannot be changed. So verifiable is a key part. You're absolutely right. But also the fact that it cannot be changed is very powerful.
So verifiability and immutability. We spoke earlier about the upcoming token, which allows people to ultimately become a bit of a stakeholder in the success of KGeN and its journey. Verify is still, as we mentioned earlier as well, such a novel concept. You are sort of the pioneer of the verify space. So how do you communicate that value to potential token buyers?
Great question. This is something that we talk about internally all the time, right? We believe that there are 2 or 3 ways that we can do this in an effective manner. One is the fact that we are revenue generating and explaining how we make this money will bring in a lot more confidence to potential token buyers. Because if I understand correctly, we would be amongst the top 25, 30 projects in the Web3 space when it comes to the revenue that we generate on an ARR basis, right? So that should give people the confidence that this is working, not just a abstract concept, but it's actually working. The second part is we have amazing backers, we have amazing investors. I alluded to the fact that we have some of the marquee names from Web2, people who invested in Facebook and Tencent have invested in KGeN. And also we have some amazing people in Web3 who understand the space, who are backing KGeN, right? Folks like Jump Capital who, have seen the space very closely. And I particularly like backers such as the Aptos Foundation because they also come from a similar background. They were building out solutions at Meta, which is essentially another way of saying that they understand how the reputation systems can be built, right? Lastly, I think to answer your question from a marketing standpoint, yes, it is a new concept, but in the world of AI, Marissa, all of us will need to find a way to verify what content is coming from where, what piece of data belongs to whom. There's going to be a world very soon where most things around us are going to be run by AI agents. For all you know, a lot of companies are already being run by AI agents. There are a lot of investors who are looking to back companies run by agents only, a single person company where everything is outsourced to agents. So verification in the world of AI is potentially novel today, but I don't think it will remain novel forever. And bots, agents, no AI agents, the fact that we are here to verify whether a particular account belongs to a particular human and they have certain skills, they have certain engagement and commerce backgrounds, and they have a network, I think has a role to play in the long run, a very powerful role to play in the long run. Anyone who has a 5 to 10 year view of the world would be able to understand what we're talking about. And if the goal is only short term multipliers, I am not 100% certain that we are targeting those people in the first place, right? So for us, it's not about trying to convince anyone, but it's about making sure that people understand and they have enough reasons to believe that we are on the right path when it comes to what vision we've set for ourselves.
I don't think anyone's contesting that we're going to need to have mechanisms to prove humanity. But I think what we've seen in the last, I want to say 2 to 3 years, is a broad amount of experimentation as to what that might meaningfully look like. So it's interesting to see how KGeN sort of positioned itself within that space and said, this is our thesis on the best approach to making sure that we know our users are real.
Yeah, and then here's the thing, right? This is a journey. We are doing certain things today that give us confidence about 40-50% of our user base. We want to increase that confidence to 100% of the user base. But the interesting part is our user base is also constantly increasing with the integrations that we're doing with other Web2 partners. Things that we are doing today, we've integrated certain third-party solutions as well to get rid of certain botting that we believe was very prevalent on the PC side of the solution, because the app side of the systems are a lot more evolved and so on, right? So there are so many moving pieces to this whole thing that the macro thesis remains the same, that verified human users will continue to add real value to the projects. The journey of how that will evolve, what percentage of the users are verified, how does a verification happen, what does it look like? We are talking about certain solutions today. Some of those solutions may look very different 12 months from now, but the thesis remains the same, which is let's build a reputation system, let's verify that reputation, and then let's connect users with projects and make sure that users get value when they're being targeted. As simple as that.
I can't help but think there's going to be a layer of confusion when people see a functioning business model and then the launch of a token within that, because I think they've always been considered necessarily intertwined, and to essentially frame it as the business thrives whether the token is bought or not. It's a strange sensation for Web3, I think, because I don't think that's really been approached in that way before.
I love that articulation, but I'll just make a small nuance to it. It's not with or without, right? We believe that the business should fly faster and higher with the launch of the token, because the network participants work harder to help the network grow.
So it's about building revenue, and it's about building out the verticals and then tying that value back to the token, where I think the vast majority of business models are, we will launch a token and the value of that token will be evidenced by the verticals we build post hoc.
You're absolutely right. We said that let's first make the flywheel work and then let's accelerate the flywheel using the token. That was our approach.
It makes so much sense, and yet somehow it's still considered rogue in our space.
I don't know why you would call it rogue, but I do believe that we are onto something here, and we're very excited for what we are trying to build at KGeN, and we are deeply committed to building this for the long run as well. And that's why not super worried about what people say today and what people will say tomorrow. It's more about what we think will continue working and hopefully stand the test of time as well.
I think the last question I'd like to leave off with is, given your entrepreneurial background and your experience both within the Web 2 and Web 3 space, if you had to distill one lesson on conviction or timing for other builders who are listening, what would it actually be?
Wow, that's a very tough question. Can I give you a very simple philosophical answer to that question?
Absolutely.
I'd say if you have something you want to build, the best time is now. It doesn't matter what is that now for you, right? It depends on you whether you have the conviction. But if you do have the conviction, just start building. Timing is impossible to figure out. There's no right time, there's no wrong time. I can talk to you at some other point about our starting journey, right? How we thought it was the best time and how it turned out to be the worst time. But in retrospect, none of those things matter. What matters is that we've been building for the last 30 odd months, and the good news is we started at that time.
So you have the scars and the profits to show for it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, Ishank, thank you so much for joining me today. It was fascinating to learn all about how KGeN is structured and how it's a business model that we're not quite used to in the Web3 space, but is hopefully going to set a new norm going forward. So stay healthy, stay hydrated, get your sleep, and best of luck, I guess.
All right. Thank you so much, Marissa. I really enjoyed the chat, and I'll see you when I see you.
See you when I see you.